Hey Rufus. Hey friends, you're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
We're just back from a very long trip.
Yep.
When we left, well, if you saw the show where we were talking about our attempt to leave and the problem we had with the water pump, you know that our start to this trip was delayed by more than a full day.
Right. And we try and leave extra time when we travel for things like, you need to replace a tire or something else in the car, a vehicle's not working right, or, the weather's awful and then you're safer to stop. Sometimes there's highways that have been closed because of flooding, accidents. We saw some terrible accidents on this trip that just, 26 miles of backup, that sort of thing. Yeah, we try and always leave extra time, and then if we have spare time, like things have gone right along the way, we will sometimes try. Last year we managed to get to the Corning Museum of Glass, and this time we're going to try and do something on the way there, but we actually did wind up going to a museum on the way back.
So, it was an interesting trip from here to Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
It was hot, and then it was rainy, and it was stormy. It was overcast.
But it was not as hot as last year. Not by a long shot. In fact, once we got out of Arizona, I was watching the forecast, and I'm like, okay, the forecast is once we're out of Arizona, it's going to actually be fairly reasonable, and it really was. That made the trip there so much nicer. Now, we made up for it when we were at the event by being really hot. But
and really rainy. We had some of the worst weather that we've had at that event in the 28 years that we've been going.
Yeah, I mean, there's been other events, other years at that event where we actually got a larger total rainfall, but this was probably the most violent weather we've had. There were a bunch of tents damaged, a whole bunch of pop-ups dead. We call them dead spiders because, when they're standing upside down, they look like a dead spider. I don't know. I did see a bunch of the larger pavilions out on the battlefield that we're down to. Most of it seems to have just gone down but not been damaged. But it was really not the kind of excitement you would like to do.
Yeah, so this year, unfortunately, was very difficult to get footage for us. There were other people who got some good footage on the battlefield, but between the weather and then the business, which was amazingly busy this year,
right,
there really wasn't the time to go out and shoot footage.
Right, and I teach 4 classes while I'm there, and each class is 2 hours long. So when I'm teaching, somebody else is going to hold down the fort, and there's always, you got to leave 15 minutes before class, at least, to get there comfortably. You don't want to arrive huffing and puffing and sweaty. And then sometimes at the end of class, students will want to talk and ask more questions and stuff like that, and I always try and oblige if I can. And, it was just...
So it was a very good show, very good event from the business standpoint. Sales could have been better.
Yeah.
But they were actually pretty decent considering the number of hours of rain that we had.
Yeah, because obviously when it's just raining a little bit, people do shop at that event. But when it's just totally blustery, nasty, driving rain and hail and all this other stuff, you're like, I don't think so. Everybody was just hunkering down someplace so that they'd be safe, and that sort of shortened your shopping days a lot of times. But it worked out in the long run, and on the way back we did stop at the Stafford Air and Space Museum, which was very fun.
Now, we did a show on that. It's a very short show because there's not a whole lot that we could say while we're at the museum. There's a lot
right,
of
and
other
actually
things
one of the
going
cameras
on.
failed too. So that's
unfortunately, the better camera failed.
Right. It's the one that's got stabilization, so it's a little jigglier than we prefer. But it was a very cool place. We spent a good solid 2 hours there, and you could have spent a lot longer.
We could have spent the entire day because
if you read every label and all the cool things, and
there's a lot of detail on each of the exhibits, and there's some really fascinating bits of history there. One of which was there's actually pieces of the original Wright Flyer on display now. The image that we have of the Wright Flyer, the footage we have of the Wright Flyer, is not the original white
It's a
flyer.
reproduction. We've seen the original one. The original one's in the Smithsonian.
It's in now it's in the National Aerospace
Mm-hmm.
Museum in Washington D.C. And unfortunately, that's not exactly the flyer that was flown because the crankcase for the original engine was broken, and the Wright brothers lent some piece of the original engine to New York for an exhibition that was going on, and the pieces were lost. They were never returned. So what's in the Aerospace Museum in Washington is not completely the same. But you know, when they restore some of these old products, they find some maker's marks inside the structure. So when they removed the fabric from that particular airplane, they found all kinds of engineering notes on the wood that gave information how it was actually put together.
Which is cool.
Yeah, but getting there, it was much hotter coming back than it was going.
Yeah, but fortunately that wasn't too big a problem. There were only a couple of days when it was really, really hot.
Unfortunately, our air conditioner worked flawlessly.
Right, but also there weren't as many days in a row that were really hot because it really grinds you down when you're boiled for multiple days in a row.
Now, one of the things that we planned to do this year, which we actually did, was we made freeze-dried food for quite a while before we took this trip.
Mm-hmm.
And we ate the food that we made on the trip going to the event, at the event, and on the trip coming back.
Right. Rufus, stop.
You gotta sit down, dude. You're making too much noise. We had really good sandwiches. I made a bunch of roast beef before we left and sliced it thin.
And some chicken too.
And chicken. And both of them rehydrated quickly.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
When we stopped for fuel, which was around lunchtime, I opened one of those Mylar bags like this up and put some water in it. And while I was busy refueling the truck,
it would rehydrate.
It was rehydrated.
I'd clean the windshield and throw away the trash that was in the front. And then, we had this little routine. And then he would quickly whip together the sandwiches because we had a cooler right in the back of the truck where you could get to it easily. So he had mayonnaise and bread and stuff in there. And yeah, we had good sandwiches every day.
So awesome. on the trip there, we spent about $3 per lunch, all in on cost. That's what we spent. Versus, we would spend $18 to $25 for sandwiches from a sandwich shop. We made those sandwiches, and we were on the road for a total of 15 days, going to and from the event, because we didn't really go as fast as we possibly could go, and we did stop to do a few things on the way back and on the way there. 15 days at, let's just say $20 a lunch is $300, and instead we spent about $45, which made a huge difference in the financial condition of the event. If you don't have to spend $20 a day on some
and that's just
average lunch, that's a pretty big deal. Now, if we go to a non-expensive restaurant for a sit-down meal, that's
$35
okay. It's
at least.
Well, we could get out for between $45 and $50. Instead, we had things like beef stroganoff, we had chicken chili, we had carnitas, we had spaghetti and meat sauce. We had pretty much every kind of food that we might make here at home, with a few exceptions. And it was open the bag, put some water in it in the hotel room, hot water, because most of the places we didn't have a cooking surface.
No, but we always, every place we stop at least has a microwave.
So we were able to put hot water in, and the longest any of these meals took to rehydrate was about 15 minutes. They were perfectly hot, they were perfectly delicious. We had guacamole to go with them, we had sour cream, all the toppings that you might like. We had the black beans that we could reconstitute. So it was a really good selection of food for dinners. We ate.
One of the problems with some of the places that we stop is that you'll have a decent hotel, but there will be really no place you'd want to eat in the area. I mean, there's the exception to that is there used to be a place that we used to stop at regularly, and we always stopped at a specific hotel because there was a good barbecue place next to it. But our schedule, because of the delayed takeoff, changed this year, so we never lined up with that town this year. But so many of the other towns, you're checking through Yelp and other organizations trying to figure someplace you'd want to eat. Sometimes you'll ask people at the hotel desk, and sometimes it's pretty awful. It really is. I mean, you do get the occasional good restaurant, but you're going to pay really big bucks for it. And in some of the Midwestern towns, the food is dreck. It really is.
So for full disclosure, we did buy a few things out. We bought 3 meals at a restaurant where we could have a large salad.
Right. We did that when we got to the other end.
Which had other vegetables in it, which was we liked to begin with, but getting some extra vegetables was nice.
Mm-hmm.
Irene surprised me with some slushies coming back from some of her classes.
Well, that was the one
great.
thing, because it was so hot at the event. We normally don't buy a lot of drinks at the event, but we will buy a few. All of our water we had with us, and we had it cold in a cooler. We had seltzer water and a little bit of soda, but slushies, and it was funny because I just ran across an article the other day that was talking about how good slushies are at cooling your body temperature down. That if you drink a slushie, it can drop your body temperature a degree in less than 20 minutes. So when you're overheated, that's a big deal in terms of making you feel better and stuff like that. And these were not too yucky. They had, they had decent stuff in them. There wasn't a lot of weird stuff, and they were just lemon slushies. We didn't get any strange colors or anything.
Now the other thing I did is I bought a few breakfast sweets that we had because they were nice to have.
It's just a fun thing. It was a treat.
Now I also bought 2 steaks while we were there.
Right. They get frozen. There's frozen meat at the camp store, and it's all grass-fed beef from a farm that belongs to a friend of theirs, and USDA approved and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's professionally butchered and stuff, so that it's legal to sell to the public. But that stuff is good, and we've used it. We normally get some of it every year. Sometimes we'll get. In the past, when we didn't have this kind of stuff, we would buy burger. Because you could buy a big pack of burger and have 2 meals out of it for less than you can buy a single burger at a vendor. So it was like this year, because we had so much good food with us, we didn't feel a need for burgers and stuff.
We really didn't go out to. In fact, we didn't actually go out and buy anything for food at this event, which is the first time in 28 years.
Yeah. The only thing we got slushies. We got a couple of drinks, like you said, the sweets from the store. We bought ice cream a couple of times because that's not something
Twice.
Yeah, and other than that, we brought everything with us.
So, to kind of go over the financial side of this, we had a total of 5 meals that we didn't bring with us.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 meals that were salads cost about $45 for the 2 of us, except 2 of them were only $25 for the 2 of us because they were a special sale.
Right.
The 2 steaks were at $10 a piece. Okay, so let's take those meals out. Every other meal would have cost us between $45 and $50.
Mm-hmm.
Even at the event, if we bought relatively cheaply.
Yeah.
So we were gone for, let's call it 30 days. That's $1,500 worth of meals.
Right.
We probably had less than $50 in actual food that we took with us in terms of the actual cost.
Right. What we
ate.
What we did for breakfast is most of the hotels that we stayed at provides a continental breakfast. And it's okay. There's usually some fruit that's decent. Some of the places you can make pancakes or waffles yourself. There's bagels. Sometimes there's different kinds of
There'll be eggs and sausages and
and
bacon,
stuff like
those
that.
kinds
So
of
that you
things.
can usually scrape together. And this year, the particular chain we were staying at tended to have very good yogurt. You could have a decent sized container, not one of these little dinky things, but actually a decent sized container of yogurt for breakfast every morning. Decent meal. So breakfast were usually free at the hotel. We did have a backup with us just in case they weren't good enough. We had protein shakes with us, which we both like, and I think we had just maybe one meal where we did that. All the other times there was enough good stuff, bananas and things like that, at breakfast that you could have a decent breakfast. And then, you're on the road and you make a sandwich for lunch, and then comes dinner time, you're at the hotel in the evening. And, I had brought a Pyrex glass container that we could stick in the microwave for making hot water. Because do not ever use the coffee makers to make hot water. If you use it for tea, it's going to make your tea taste like coffee. I've done that just once. And most of the hotels will have hot water downstairs. They have a tea and coffee service down there where you can pick it up. But we just use the microwave, and we do have an additional glass casserole with us just in case the food's not quite hot enough. We could heat it up that way. We didn't need it most of the time. And it was fast. 15 minutes. Basically, I'd be getting the room set up in terms of getting the dog's stuff all set, and by the time I'd have all that stuff, dinner would be ready.
Yeah, Chef Henry.
Yeah, Chef Henry would have dinner ready, and we knew what was in it. That's a big deal. The food is safe. It's delicious. You really enjoy it. You're relaxed. You don't have to. You can be.
And there was nothing in the food that was going to upset either of our stomachs,
Yes.
which is a big deal when we travel. If you have to stop driving for 3, 4, 10 hours because somebody has a GI issue, that can really put a crimp in your driving.
And it's better now than it used to be because there's a lot of truck stops out there.
So let me summarize what I think the trip was like. Going there was really relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
It was easy. Yeah, the temperatures were a little bit on the warm side, but not as warm as it's been in the past. Mm-hmm. We had more rain and more overcast, which made it cooler, which was also nice.
But we managed to, on the way there, avoid most of the worst storms. They were going like north of us or south of us, so we'd kind of catch the edge, so it would cool things down, but it wouldn't be torrential rain and flood and things like that.
Yeah, being there was a financial success. Mm-hmm. Not as big a success as we could hope for, because we always hope more. Bigger.
Yeah.
But it was still good. Mm-hmm. Coming back, on the way there, we had no problems whatsoever with the truck. Mm-hmm. Coming back, I noticed a bulging sidewall. Mm-hmm. Stopped to get that tire replaced. Got it replaced before it blew out on the highway. Right. And that saved probably $1,000.
Right, because if you have to call the mobile repair guys, they charge you big bucks, and you might have to wait 3-4. We've had to wait 3 or 4 hours before for them to arrive. So we were able to we were at a gas station getting fuel, and then
across the street
there was a tire shop. Talked to them. They didn't have the right size tire.
A mile away there was another tire
But they
shop.
sent us down the street and told us where to go, and we went there. The guy had the tire we needed, and he put us in right away because he said, "You guys are on the road, so we get you in and we get you out."
Yeah. So coming back was a success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We got to see things that. In fact, both of the places that we stopped on the way back. Mm-hmm. We stopped at Layman's. Mm-hmm. We typically don't stay there very long because we've been there before. But it's nice to see what new things they're putting in. And I was personally shocked that they had a freeze dryer.
Yeah, yeah.
And they had it set up, they had the supplies, but they didn't have an inventory of them. You place an order right next door at the order desk. Right. And then what would happen is it would be drop shipped to you directly from the manufacturer.
But they did have an inventory of the supplies. So they had bags and silicone mats and stuff like that.
So it was really interesting to see that. We saw, as usual, the large collection of antiques, stoves and meat grinders and refrigerators and washing machines.
It's gorgeous.
And then they've expanded their retro look of modern appliances. So you could get a 1950s styled microwave.
Right. And of course there were no microwaves back then. But you could get a microwave that would fit into a 1950s style kitchen and look perfectly reasonable. And the fridges that looked like what my grandma used to have and all that kind of stuff. It's very cool. We actually know people who are that heavily into retro stuff that they will buy stuff like that. Or they will renovate old equipment so that it meets modern standards. I think it's fun, but that's work I don't need to do.
So we got back home, and then I had to start trying to track down a new pressure switch for the water system.
Right.
The pressure switch I used to temporarily repair the water system
Works fine.
doesn't have a low water shutoff.
Yeah, it doesn't have a safety feature in
Which
there.
means that if the water tanks go dry, the pump will burn up. Which means for the lack of a $35 part, you
You'll
burn
cook
up a $180
Yeah.
pump.
Yeah. So that was one of the quests this week. It took multiple visitations of locations to find that.
3 different trips, 3 different stores, because you never know if they really have it until you go look on the shelf.
Right. Right.
The 3rd place had it. I bought it. I haven't had the chance to install it
yet,
because
no.
we've
Other things.
had a day of doctor's visits and a
Yeah.
day
Just stuff that we had arranged ahead of time that we had going on. Like I needed my teeth cleaned. The dog needed his Bordetella vaccine. It was just all those things, and where we were able to smush them all into one day, so that we were gone all day and we're beat, but they're done.
So it's been a really cram-packed week.
Mm.
We came back to not a whole lot of mail. We did come back to some parts that I need to be able to repair one of the broken pieces of equipment in the studio.
Right.
Which is nice. Unfortunately, I haven't had the time to.
Well, we're
repair.
hoping that we bought a new battery for the solar system, so that'll add more storage, which is what we're lacking right now. Is we need more storage. So supposedly he has all these supplies for that. Then
I do.
So he's got all the supplies to repair the water system and upgrade it so that it's got that safety feature in it, and the repair part for the kiln is in for the studio. We also need to set up the new drill press that we bought before we went to the event.
Before I had the real problems with my knees.
Right, but we had we didn't buy it that long ago, but
No,
we bought it. We bought it before we went to Pennsic, and the problem is it has to be bolted to the floor, which means we have to move things around the studio. If I'm changing my process at all, I'll move equipment around, things like that. But since this needs to be bolted to the floor, we have to do some bit more moving than usual because we're trying to figure out where it makes sense to have it.
I don't want to have to remove the bolts
No.
because I have to cut them off.
Yeah, so we want to just put it where it's going to be and have it be there forever, which means we've got to think about it. So we've been working on that, and I've been doing some of my normal cleanup and also refitting some of my equipment in different locations and stuff like that. So there's all this stuff going on. So this weekend is a holiday in the United States, Labor Day weekend, and there will be all kinds of crazy people. We already saw a bunch of them today driving their RVs around and stuff like that. The goal is actually to stay home.
I don't want to drive. I have a lot of stuff to do. I'd like to stay here. I don't want to be out on the roads here.
It's actually supposed
on
to
Labor
rain
Day
this weekend.
Well, people are already doing crazy passing. I was passed today by a number of vehicles that passed on the double yellow line.
Which is against the law in the United States.
For those of you who don't know, double yellow line here means do not pass. That means usually there's going to be a blind curve, a blind hill, or something else, and 65 miles an hour or higher speed plus 65 miles an hour usually results in fatalities. I don't want to be around that.
Right,
So
we don't need that kind of drama.
I don't want to be around when people are driving like that. So
Right.
my goal is stay home at least until next Tuesday or Wednesday.
Right.
Hopefully I can make it that long.
Yeah, our goal is usually to stay home on the major holidays. We very rarely go on the major holidays. We try and have all our goodies at home. We'll have the chips and the dip and all the fun things that we can enjoy, and then stay home.
So you know what time it is?
Yes, it's time for me to warm up dinner because I'm hungry.
It's time to say goodbye, Irene.
Yes, so be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because we're going to be doing a ton more stuff.
And you'll want to watch for an announcement that we'll be making, I'm not sure when, about something new that we're going to be doing. We're not going to do it here on this channel, and we'll explain why. But it'll be interesting for a lot of people. There's a lot of things going on that we think that are going to really improve people's lives.
Right. But that'll be on another channel.
Yep.
Because
So-
that way people have the option of what they want. They can watch both channels or they can watch one or the other. So,
Well, thanks for watching. We'll talk with you later.
bye.
Bye.